Hello, friend. This is Ryan Hicks of TalkToProfit.com, and today I want to continue the previous teaching I had about some tips in having the mindset of a billionaire. This is going to be a little more detailed on things you can do each day. Now, none of these things by themselves or even together will guarantee you become a billionaire, because the biggest part of what all of them have said is that it was action. Yes, there are people who inherit billions and that kind of stuff, but we're talking about people who came from relatively nothing, maybe middle class. Many came from extreme poverty and became billionaires. But they have common characteristics about them that make them very different from average people. If you want to become a great success in life, you can't do what everybody else is doing. You can't just be like average people. They get average results because that's all they do is what average people do. They never step out of that, really, it's a cage, that prison cell. They just stay in there, doing the same things, living to be entertained, just consuming. And that leads to that mediocre life they have. But the billionaires do something different. Where right now the average American is getting fatter and fatter, the average billionaire is at a healthy weight. And they do something very unique. They not only have a good diet generally, they also exercise every day. Or at least 3 or 4 times a week. They exercise regularly, I should say. Most do it every day, though. And this is something they've been doing for decades. These are some of the people with the most activity. They are the busiest people you could find in the world, and they still find time to exercise. Where average people who barely get anything done today, only have an 8-hour workday, always have excuses why they can't find the time to exercise, or they don't feel up to it. Not realizing that, as one billionaire aptly noted, by using energy, exercising in the mornings, it gave him more energy. It's a paradox of sorts, but it's true. You exercise each and every day, you will find that you have more energy, not less. And average people always use that as an excuse. Well, I don't have enough energy. That's why, because you're not exercising. And then, of course, if you're taking in the wrong fuel, if you're eating animal flesh and dairy and eggs and all these things that bring you down and cause you to be sluggish and cause you to have less energy, how in the world could you have more energy? You're putting bad fuel into your system. And then you're not exercising, so the system is not getting a replenishment of energy. All of that works together to keep you lethargic and lacking energy. Another thing is they have discipline. It was very interesting in going through a lot of interviews of billionaires. Many of them said they did things they didn't like to do. There were parts of their business, parts of their day they didn't like to do. Some of it was exercise. But they did it because they knew the benefits they would get from it, and they disciplined themselves. They didn't let their bodies, they didn't let the flesh control them. They went and were masters of their own selves. They went and did the things they needed to do, even if they didn't like it, because they had mastery over themselves. This is very important, especially as a Christian. One of the fruit of the Spirit is self-control, temperance. We need to have this in our lives. You need to be disciplined. It doesn't mean everything you do is things you don't like and everything's miserable. It's not like that at all. But there are going to be things in life that you have to do, and you have to be disciplined to do them, even if you don't want to do them. Or maybe you just don't like them. If every aspect of your life is something you completely hate, one thing you need to do is make sure your attitude is right and your heart's right, and you're focusing on the good, and you're following Philippians 4:8. But the other thing is, maybe you need to make some different decisions. If everything's miserable, everything's bad, and you fixed your attitude, it's not just your attitude that's bad, because that's most of the time the reality. Make some different decisions so you're not in those bad situations all the time. But do understand that in life, you will have things you have to do that sometimes are not the most pleasing. But if you're going to be a great success, you can't be these people that only do the things they like. That's what the consumers do. That's what the people who just follow mindless entertainment do. And they get little to nothing done, and they live lives that are drab and mediocre and sad and depressed. That's why, for example, in the United States, There's so many people on some sort of anxiety medication or depression medication. Things that could be solved if they just changed their attitude, chose to think about only things that are lovely and a good report. They exercised so they had more energy and they weren't run down and depressed feeling. They ate the right diet, things that would boost their mentality, make them feel better, put them in a higher vibrational state. But they're getting the Band-Aid approach by getting drugs to give them an artificial improvement, which really is no improvement at all. And the next thing I noticed that many billionaires did was they took time to think. They set aside time to think. Now, some of them would take 20, 30-minute showers. That's where they got a lot of thoughts. They would think. Some of them did a lot of thinking while they were on jogs in the morning, doing their exercise and thinking at the same time. And they would often say about how when they would get home from their run, the problems and things that they had going on in their mind that they couldn't solve were all worked out, all resolved. There's something about that movement and activity. There's something about even being in a shower where your subconscious mind can just come in and solve those things. And you can get downloads from the Holy Spirit and really receive wisdom from God. You're more open to it. And the last thing I want to leave you with that's very important, that all of them that I've read so far have said they did, was read every day. Every day. And as I mentioned before, these are people who are some of the busiest people in the world with all kinds of endeavors going on, and they have time to read. Meanwhile, the studies show that the average person, this is on average, reads a book a year. There's a lot of people who don't read anything. That average is skewed because there are people reading 3 or 4 books a year, and there's a lot of people reading 0. And that's actually probably more likely to be the case, that most people are reading 0. But successful people, billionaires even, they are reading each and every day. They are learning and growing. Some of them are reading novels, but they are novels that cause them to think, mystery novels and things like that, that could cause them to kind of put aside some subconscious blocks, and actually allows them to think about something else, get their mind off of the issues in their businesses and stuff, and then they solve their issues. It's said of J.P. Morgan that he would, when he had an issue, he would sit down and play solitaire and give himself time to not think about the particular issue, put it aside. And when he was done, he would have a solution. Reading can be the same way. Sometimes reading fictional work even can kind of loosen up and get that subconscious mind flowing, where you have ideas come up that solve the problem that you had in your business, or solve the issue, or gave you a different idea or a new product idea or something of that nature that benefits you greatly. And it has nothing to do with the actual content of the book you're reading. But I want to reiterate, these are things that are so important. Now, you don't have to want to become a billionaire. That doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how much money, we're not talking about that, or how many possessions or businesses or whatever. Whatever you want to do, whatever God's put in your heart is fine. That, as long as you're doing it to honor God, and you're doing it with a pure heart, not greedily, not trying to cling on to every penny you can, but you want to be a blessing. You want to have the good life, of course. You want to live an abundant life that Jesus came to give you. Whatever you want, whatever your desire is fine. But these things will help you in that regard. You need daily exercise, or at least regular exercise. You need discipline. There's going to be things you're going to have to do that maybe you don't like doing, but you do them anyway because you're a disciplined person. You've mastered yourself. You have to have time to think. Now, that can be, like I mentioned, put in with your exercise practice. So if you go running, you can think while you're running. You should be thinking while you're running, and you might come up with great ideas. And lastly, reading. You have to read. Reading is so important. It's so fundamental. It opens your horizons to new ideas, new concepts, new ways of approaching life, new ways of thinking about situations that you may have never came up with on your own. They will be opened up to you. And it will allow you to be more open to receive the wisdom of God in your life. The wisdom of God may come through those very books that you're reading as well. Sometimes that's the way God works. So my friend, I pray this was a blessing for you. If you have liked this series and would like me to maybe get into more quotes from billionaires, more thoughts they've had and things they've talked about and ascribed to their success, then let me know. I pray this was a blessing for you. May God bless you richly.